Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And this one is going to be all about the Me Too movement. Before I start, make sure if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to support my channel, you can. I have a Cash App at $Trevor Donald 20. Trevor Donald 20. And I do appreciate your support and listening to these interesting topics that are taking place throughout our country and the world, and trying to bring a PhD common sense PhD semi-legal viewpoint and an adult middle-aged viewpoint on a lot of circumstances that are taking place in the world. And this Me Too movement is moving like some kind of pandemic or epidemic. And there's been a plethora of people that have been caught up in these cases. And I want to take us back because a lot of this has to deal with legal nomenclature and how important the law is. And if you've listened to some of my previous videos, I talk about the most important thing as a voter that one should pay attention to is your city and state voting rights and your city and state laws. The majority of people who end up in criminal cases, most of them are state cases versus federal. So before we rush off to go vote for our President of the United States, we need to know about our mayor, our councilman, our alderman, our state governor, and how the laws that are being enacted affect you as an everyday citizen. Do you live in a blue state, red state? Because many times before a law becomes federal, it's enacted at the state level first, and then one or two states pick it up, and then they enact it federally. That's generally how it goes. But I'm going to give some analogies to this Me Too movement where we're having this kind of panacea of this thing against men, it seems like. In this Me Too movement, you have a lot of women that are coming out with these cases that are 35, 40, and with Bill Cosby 50 years ago. And that's somewhat alarming. If you go back to 1964 under Lyndon Johnson, we had the Welfare Act and the Civil Rights Act enacted. And of course, we all know with the Welfare Act, especially for people of color, women were rewarded by the state and the federal government for being in a home that was fatherless, no man around. So that way you could get food stamps, a welfare check, and all of those kinds of things. So that was a delineation of the man, father, mentor, leader, to be castigated out of the house. Then you proceed on to the 80s. In the 70s, we were more community involved. The Civil Rights Right had been enacted. We went from segregation to integration, and the 70s seemed to birth the best time where white families and black families were unified. Then we get to the 80s, and then a lot of these states enacted these child support laws, which initially affected men, fathers, tremendously, and was sending fathers of children to jail if they didn't pay or had trouble paying. They lost their driver's license, professional license, and even some of them went to prison. That law made not an ounce of sense. How in the world could you work a job and pay child support or take care of your children if you don't have a driver's license or any kind of barbershop license, or whatever you did for a living got taken away? And as everybody knows, or should know, child support is a civil case. It's no different if you defaulted on a bank loan, and if you defaulted on a bank loan, you didn't go to prison. If you defaulted for a certain period of time on the welfare and taking care of your children, you shouldn't go to prison for that either. And so they put a stranglehold on many fathers trying to support their children through these child support laws and their civil cases that they turned into a criminal case. And so that went on, and then you started seeing that women that made more money than the men, that got reverberated back to they started locking up women for child support issues. And I think that was a blunder. And I think if you pay attention to your state legislators, to your aldermen, to the laws that are being passed that we're voting for, we have to realize that those have either a positive or a deleterious effect on you as the common citizen each and every day. We need to pay attention to our state and city laws before we look at our federal and who's the president and the vice president. I mean that wholeheartedly. When you are involved with a traffic stop in your city or in another city, those are state issues. So you're going to have issues that involve state laws way before you will have issues with the federal government. And I'm bringing all of this up that I'm going to correlate this to the Me Too movement in a second. And of course, they enacted the RICO laws, which are federal racketeering, conspiracy laws, but and you have state RICO and federal RICO. And as you see in Atlanta, a lot of these people are getting hit with RICO charges. That is a very loosely galvanized law where you could send almost anybody to jail, and the person may not even know that they're involved in a crime that's being taken place. So lawyers play a significant role in our American system, and most of your politicians have legal backgrounds. Joe Biden was a lawyer, whether he practiced law or not. Barack Obama was a lawyer. Bill Clinton was a lawyer. Many of your senators, congressmen, congresspersons, presidents have all been lawyers. I think it's the most powerful degree you can have. I think it's the most feared degree. Doctors fear lawyers. Police officers fear lawyers. Everybody fears lawyers. I think it's the most powerful, flexible degree you could have. From the moment that you wake up and place your feet on the ground, the law is in full effect. And the law is all wrapped around your freedoms and constraints in life, especially in America. And of course, in that same vantage in talking about the law, because it has everything to do with this Me Too movement, the Me Too movement and these lawsuits seem like they are going to be the new class action lawsuits. If you remember in the 90s, lawyers got rich off class action lawsuit cases all day long with the tobacco company, with the pharmaceutical company. But it takes a little bit of work because class action lawsuits, you need hundreds and thousands of people to be involved in it for lawyers to raise the premium on what they're asking for. And of course, when they finally win the lawsuit, whether it's 600 million or $1 billion, the plaintiffs get very little bit of the money and the lawyers walk away with all of it. It's the biggest scam and game that's been out there. And that was real heavy in the 90s. Willie Gary has won a lot of class action lawsuits, black lawyer out of Florida, and done it extremely well. A lot of lawyers have gotten rich off class action lawsuits. That's the reason why you can't smoke in any buildings anymore, statewide or federally. That's because of class action lawsuits. And there was a lot of commercials about it, with lawyers, Morgan and Morgan, and all these kinds of lawyers that were going to chase the big dollar. Even Johnny Cochran, who got his fame as a criminal attorney in LA, before he died, he had moved over to class action lawsuits and started putting offices in several cities throughout America. And then it's kind of died down. Lawyers hit the pharmaceutical companies and the tobacco companies and all the big companies they could hit. And now somebody is pushing the button for this Me Too movement. And there are a plethora of entertainers that are getting inundated with lawsuits from 35 and 40 and 50 years ago. And of course, just to name a few of them, remember Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Sean Puffy Combs is involved in it, Russell Simmons, Axl Rose, Jamie Foxx, Cuba Gooding Jr., Vin Diesel lately, Jimmy Iovine, L.A. Reid, and now Jermaine Jackson. A young lady has filed a lawsuit against Jermaine Jackson from 1988. And these lawsuits, you had the Survivors Act in New York, and then you have a similar Survivors Act in LA. And I think it's interesting that it's both taking place in New York and LA, which are the hubs for the entertainment industry. And somebody is pushing this narrative to go after these entertainers. And I think these are going to be easier cases for lawyers than the class action lawsuit cases, because you're dealing with one individual who's going after another individual. So you don't need 10,000 signatures or 10,000 plaintiffs. You get one plaintiff to go after a big fish or a whale, and you try to get a settlement out of it. And most of these are being done civilly. But I'm doing this YouTube channel because I think what you're going to find, just like child support, which was a state mandated law. Missouri was different than Illinois, different than Georgia. But once they started enacting it in the 80s, it went all the way across the country. And as I said, those were civil matters that they turned into criminal matters. And I actually know personally people that did a year in jail 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 years in jail for child support, which is ridiculous. If the father goes to jail, he definitely can't pay. If you take his driver's license, his professional licenses, he definitely can't pay. There are other ways to get the money from the father or the mother by filing judgments against them without sending them to jail. It happens every day. And for lawyers and judges to turn that into a criminal action right under us civilians' noses, we need to pay attention and wake up. And this Me Too movement is a legal ramification, and it can affect anybody, and definitely high net worth people. And as I told you, Jermaine Jackson has been hit. I mean, if Michael Jackson's brother was alive today, he would be inundated with these Me Too movement lawsuits. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I know a lot of women would say if egregious things happen to them that people should pay, but I think there's a time frame. I mean, who waits 30, 40 years to file a case? Some of these things sound like they're very arbitrary. But if a lawyer thinks that he can get something out of it, your Gloria Allreds and people of that nature who understand the law, especially in the state of California and New York, where most of your big entertainment fish are, your whales, your men of power, fame, and fortune, this is an easy payday. And for women who think that I'm anti-woman, which I'm not, the flip side of it is, what if this was happening to your father, son, nephew, brother? And some of these lawsuits have to be felonious. I mean, 40 years, where's the evidence? How do we know what really went on and what did not go on? Is this a he say, she say? And some of these cases could be a form of extortion. And I think in today's time, this has to be the toughest time in the world to want to be famous as an athlete or entertainer. These young athletes in the NBA, baseball, and football, they better watch out, because as you see, there's writing on the wall where this Me Too movement is going after all of these entertainers. These athletes will be next. And meeting random women and doing suspect things or taking a chance, you're putting yourself at a high financial liability. And I hope that some of you all will listen to this commentary. But I would not want to be a famous basketball player who just signed a $200 or $300 million contract and I'm 25 years old. If an allegation had been said about me then or now, what in the world is going to happen 5 years or 10 years from now? And if this Me Too movement and these Survivors Act statutes become federal, it is going to be a tough day for high net worth individuals, because as you can see, they're not suing anybody that doesn't have any money. They're not suing poor people, poor males. And it is slightly skewed on all of these black entertainers. So there is some kind of conspiracy, controversy, or somebody's pushing this button to run with this whole thing. And it's very, very worrisome. We're in a time of character assassination that is at an all-time high in premium. It's not even about sending someone to prison, but if you could character assassinate them, that with social media today and the push of a button of information, that will stay with that person forever. Puffy Combs' life will never be the same. Bill Cosby's life will never be the same. But if they did victimize these women, their lives will never be the same, and then they should pay. But for the ones that are just making up these stories, I'm just letting you know from a legal standpoint that this is infringing on our rights, and we need to pay attention to the laws that are being made on the books. And just when you think it couldn't happen to you, it will, and it can. And we have to remember that the sovereignty of our state and our government is not for the protection of its people, it's the protection of the government. And sovereignty means the authority of a state to govern itself or another state, supreme power, especially over a body politically. So the police were not even designed to protect the people. The police force was designed to protect the state, the city, and the government. We have to understand that. I'm not saying that the police are against you, but we need to understand the power of words. We need to understand this whole Me Too movement. And I think that some of these lawsuits are felonious. I think this is a new class action lawsuit, but it's not a ton of people, a ton of plaintiffs. You can have one or two victims, or you can have 5 or 6. But before, in the class action lawsuit, say against a pharmaceutical company, you might have to have 10,000 complainants. And now with this Me Too movement and these lawsuits, you don't have to have that many. So it's making the job of these lawyers very easy, and it's making it very easy for them to get a quick payday. I mean, look at how fast Puffy settled that case. And probably it was his insurance company more so than him, with Cassie. And you're talking $30 million. If a lawyer prepared it over a few months, he gets at least a third plus expenses. So he got over $10 million for a few months worth of work. This is going to open up a barrage, an entire chasm of lawsuits. And I think this is just the beginning. I think if you're a professional athlete, a high net worth individual, you need to be very careful. Either stay married to who you're married to, or if you find somebody, you better make sure that she has just as much to lose as you. And but picking random women and having fun with them, you could end up paying a price in the near future for it. So you need to, so all people, especially these entertainers and athletes, and evidently even more especially these African American ones, with Vin Diesel, with Jamie Foxx, with all of these black entertainers that are being sued, these black athletes are going to be right behind them. They are signing $300, $400, and $500 million contracts, and it is some desperate measures and some desperate people out here who will do anything to chase the bag. We need to watch this Me Too movement scenario very closely. It is going to change the entire narrative and caveat for the judicial system. New York and California, Chicago will be inundated with these lawsuits. This is just the beginning. And of course, you know, now that they've started loosening up the laws, they're not sending people to jail for child support anymore. You have this, in Illinois, you have the SAFE-T Act. You have a no bond, a no bail system in LA County. So they've gone from doing, the legal system has gone from doing too much to too little. But I never thought that sending someone to jail for child support made an ounce or inkling of any sense. And I think this is one of the problems that we have in the urban community, where you've had all these fatherless homes and these kids are basically raising themselves. And we are having a purging and a children of the corn that's taking place throughout our supposed civilized first world society. And it is alarming. This Me Too movement, now Jermaine Jackson, I don't know if it's ever going to stop, but I think every day that we wake up, you're going to hear about more and more people that are getting sued for so-called circumstances that took place 20, 30, and 40 years ago. And where is the evidence from 25 years ago, from 30 years ago? It'd be different if it was 6 months, 2 months, you know, any of that kind of thing. But these cases that are being filed and being accepted in our judicial system is very alarming. So pay attention to your state, your local laws. Make sure you vote. That's where your voting power is. Know who your alderman is, your councilman, your mayors. This migrant crisis is an issue that's taking place in Chicago, New York, Denver. Those are state and federal laws that are taking place, and federal money and state money. Everything is about money and power. This migrant issue is getting out of hand and is devastating.